What is going on, college basketball fans? Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to give you guys one thing or one fact about every single team that is in the March Madness tournament. We don't have an official bracket as I am recording this video, but it is the day of the Selection Sunday reveal. So we have a good idea who is going to be in, and there are going to be a few extra teams. I'm going to include pretty much all the bubble teams just in case, something crazy happens and a team we don't expect gets in. That will be covered here as well. And for games like Yale and Cornell, I will be talking about both teams because I'm unsure who wins the Ivy League tournament. But all of those teams, like the bubble teams, will be at the end of this video. All the teams at the start are going to be teams that we know pretty much for sure are going to be in the tournament. So leave a like if you guys enjoy, subscribe if you guys are new. One thing about every team this year in March Madness. Here we go. First team, we do have the Duke Blue Devils, and I do think that they might have snagged the top overall seed over the Auburn Tigers, and they are the only team in the country that is top 5 in offense and defense. They have, in my opinion, the National Player of the Year on their team in Cooper Flagg, who is the top freshman in the country. And they have been dominating all season long. They just won the ACC tournament without Cooper Flagg playing in the semis, half of the quarterfinals, or the championship game, and they still won their league. Duke is a dominant team and definitely has potential to win the national championship. Next up, we got Auburn, and Auburn has had a really rough week. I really wanted to come in here and give you guys one good fact about them because they have been dominant all season long, and they are the regular season champs in the SEC, which is the best conference in college basketball. But I have to let you guys know that they are heading into March Madness very cold. They are 2-3 in the month of March right now, and that is not good. That is the coldest that they have been all season long. But I do still think that with all these seniors that are on this team, veteran head coach in Bruce Pearl, who has won championships in D2 and who has been to the Final Four in 2019, I still think that they have potential to win the championship 100%, but they are heading into March very cold. Next up, we have Houston, who has one of the top defenses in the entire country. In my opinion, with the eye test, I think that they are the best defense in the country. They force a ton of turnovers, and they are the Big 12 regular season and tournament champions. And look out for LJ Cryer. He is a sniper. We all are used to Houston having a tough defense every single year, but this year they have shooters. LJ Cryer, Emmanuel Sharp, look out. They can hit some threes. Next up, we got Florida, who is top 10. Not so good as Duke, who is top 5 in both offense and defense, but they are top 10 in offense and defense, and they have one of the best point guards in the country in Walter Clayton Jr., who I have talked about could lead his team on a Kemba Walker, Trey Burke-esque run. Florida, definitely a team who can win it all this year. They are very, very good. Next up, we got Alabama, who very easy to talk about here. They are a very NBA style offense. They are going to shoot three-pointers and drive to the rack. They are going to try to avoid shooting mid-range shots, and they want to get out and run. They want to play fast-paced, go into their offense fast, shoot within the first 10 or 15 seconds of the shot clock. Don't have the best defense in the world, but they are going to get out and run, play at a high pace, and they made the Final Four last year, and they're returning their senior point guard in Mark Sears and some other great players like Grant Nelson. See, Tennessee, it says, according to KenPom, that they are the top defense in the country. I definitely think that they are one of the best. I still think Houston is the best defense in the country, but they are led by some senior guards on this team, and their point guard's Zakai Ziegler. It seems like he's been there forever, but senior guards are so important whenever it comes to March Madness runs, and Tennessee was in the Elite Eight last year, so this could be the year that they finally make it to the Final Four. Jazz Lanier is going to be the X factor for this team because he is their best and really one of their only good shooters on this team, and he could have some breakout games this year where he makes 7 or 8 threes. That is going to be huge for this Tennessee team, whether they go far or not. Next up, we do have St. John's, who is another top defense in the country, and our next team is going to be one of the top defenses in the country as well. But St. John's plays a relentless defense. They have 3 guards on their team that can really make any pass on the court, and that is RJ Lewis, Kadari Richmond, and Davon Smith. They are super good. They got Zuby Ejiofor down low, who is a transfer from Kansas, who has really broken out this year and is a double-double machine, and they are coached, of course, by legendary Rick Pitino, who has won national championships at Louisville and Kentucky. Michigan State is the team I was talking about, where we are going to talk about another team with a top defense. They are very similar to St. John's as far as they are not a very good shooting team. They shoot free throws better than St. John's, but still, 3 points, they're about the same as St. John's, but they win because they have very good depth. They get out and run, they force turnovers, and they get extra possessions. That is so huge, and you could say that their best player is Jace Richardson, which is the son of legendary player from Michigan State, Jason Richardson, who is a freshman who really started to break out towards the middle of this season and is looking like he is going to be a big X factor for how far this Michigan State team can go. Wisconsin is next, and Wisconsin has really surprised me this year because they have John Tonje, and John Tonje is not really like a household name for college basketball, but he has become one this year, and out of nowhere he has become the best transfer player in the entire country. How far Wisconsin goes is going to be determined on how far he can take them. They have other good players like John Blackwell and Stephen Crow, but he is going to be the reason if they go as far as the Final Four. I could definitely see that path for them. Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a really interesting team because usually you think of Texas Tech, you think of some relentless defenses, but not this year, not under Coach Grant McCasland. He has them as a top 10 offense in the country. They like to get out and run, and they like to force turnovers. They don't have the best defense, but they can definitely force the turnovers and lead into offense. And they also have one of the best centers in the country in JT Toppin, the transfer from New Mexico, who is the Big 12 Player of the Year. Iowa State is a team that started off very strong and started to fall off here lately. And they were looking like maybe a bona fide 1 seed at the beginning of the season and really throughout the first half of the season. They've dropped down to around a 3 or a 4, and I still think that they do have potential to go very far this season as far as maybe the Final Four. And it is all going to be determined on, is their team finally fully healthy? It seemed like they were going to be healthy heading into the Big 12 tournament, and they were, but they did end up losing to BYU. But Curtis Jones and Milan Momcilovic are going to be huge because they are great 3-point shooters, and those are the type of players who can lead you on deep runs in this tournament, especially with a veteran point guard in Tamin Lipsey and Keyshawn Gilbert. Those are going to be huge for Iowa State. I think they have all the makings of a team that can still make the Final Four even with their recent struggles. Texas A&M is an interesting team as well because they have another really good defense, and they have a senior point guard on their team that led them to the Sweet 16 last season in Wade Taylor. A lot of people look at him and say that he's a shot chucker, but he is still a very good player who just has the green light. But his consistency behind the 3-point line and really just shooting in general is really going to be determined on how far the Texas A&M team can go. But if he's having a bad day, they are really going to depend on Zerk Phelps and this defense. Maryland is a team that really plays through their twin towers down low, and that is Derek Queen, who is one of the top freshmen in the country, and also Julian Reese. Both these guys are going to be grabbing boards like crazy and scoring down low, but they also have really good guards in Jacoby Gillespie and also Rodney Rice, who has really stepped up into a true shooter for this team and really embraced that role, and I think that is going to be a huge X factor for how far this Maryland team can go. I don't hear many people talking about Maryland, but they are going to be a 4 or a 5 seed that could really surprise some people this year. Kentucky is a very easy team to talk about because they do have a few injuries, including Jackson Robinson, which is going to be a big missing piece for this team for this March Madness push this year, but they have one of the best offenses in the country, and their defense has been improving. It is still not the best, but it has been improving, and a lot of that has to do with Lamont Butler. They are going to need him fully healthy for March Madness if they are going to make a push, but their offense can outscore just about anybody. Clemson is a team that made the Elite 8 last year, and they are returning a senior guard in Chase Hunter and a senior center in Ian Shefflin. They have all the makings of a team that can get back to the Sweet 16 at least, and a team that is very slept on because they play in a very weak ACC conference, but I really like Clemson a lot to get back to the Sweet 16. St. Mary's is looking like same old St. Mary's, coached by Coach Bennett, and They play slow. They have a good defense. They're going to use up a lot of that shot clock and just control the pace, which makes them a very rangy team, just like they are every year. Last year, they lost in the first round to Grand Canyon, but we could see them in the Sweet 16 this year. I think that they're going to be a 6 or a 7 seed. They beat Gonzaga 2 out of 3 times this year. Speaking of the devil, we do have the Gonzaga Bulldogs next. Gonzaga, their fact is going to be a fun one because they are actually top 10 in the net rankings, even though they were going to get anywhere from a 6 to an 8 seed this selection Sunday. They have a top 10 net rankings, and all the advanced analytics love them. They have a top 10 offense in the country. They have a senior point guard in Ryan Nembhard. They have 3 really good centers who can come in and score in the post and rebound for them, including Graham Ike, who is one of the best centers in the country. So look out for Gonzaga to maybe pull off some upsets and make a deeper run than you might think. And Oregon is a very rangy team, and you can never really doubt Dana Altman. I feel like Dana Altman is a very good head coach who never gets much respect, but they also have a really good player in Jackson Shelstad who could be an underrated guy heading into March Madness who could really lead his team to a couple of wins. Louisville is another super underrated team because they play in a weaker ACC conference, but they have been dominating that league just as much as Clemson this year, and them two haven't been doing it quite as much as Duke, but they are right behind them, and a lot of that is due to Chucky Hepburn and Terrence Edwards. These are 2 guards who can both get buckets at will anytime they want. They can get to their spots, drive to the rack, and they are both pretty clutch players as well. Chucky Hepburn just hit a buzzer beater the other day, and it was awesome to see. So I definitely think that between these 2 senior guards, Louisville could go on a sneaky little run this year. Purdue is your reigning runner-ups from last season. They are losing Zach Edey, but they are returning a veteran point guard who is a junior this year in Braden Smith, who is the Big Ten Player of the Year. He is going to be able to score, shoot the 3-ball very well, and also dime it up. He is going to have anywhere from 7 to 10 assists most games, and they also still have another really good center. Even though they have lost Zach Edey, Trey Kaufman-Renn, TKR, has been killing it this year. The big question mark for Purdue is going to be their defense in this tournament. If they go up against one of these high-powered offenses, are they going to be able to keep up? That could be where Purdue slips up this year. Speaking of really good offenses, BYU. BYU is heading into March Madness as maybe one of the hottest teams in the country. They did run into Houston in the semis of the Big 12, but before that, they were on a pretty massive win streak, including 2 wins over Iowa State, wins over Arizona, 2 wins over West Virginia. They were killing teams and playing fantastic, and a lot of that has to do with Richie Saunders. He has been killing it for them lately, and they've been shooting lights out. Arizona really reminds me a lot of Texas A&M this year, not so much because of the defense, but because their best player is really going to determine how far they can go, because he does have the green light, and that is Caleb Love. Him and Wade Taylor are very similar players where their team relies on them being consistent, or at least consistent enough just to win the game. I also think KJ Lewis is going to be a huge X factor for Arizona in this tournament. He has to play good, and he has to take his shots because he is deadly in the mid-range. He's got to take them, though. Michigan is another Big Ten team, kind of similar to Maryland, where they are going to play through their 2 bigs down low, and that is between Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf. The difference is Danny Wolf can step outside and hit the 3-ball, but really he is going to want to step outside and make the pass and dime it up. He is a very good passing big man who you have to guard when he's at the top of the key, not necessarily because he's going to make a ton of threes, he will make a couple, but because you can't give him the vision to make those passes. And they will run a pick and roll with both of their big men, with Danny Wolf as the ball handler of the pick and roll. Missouri has one of the best offenses in the country, and they are one of the better shooting teams in the country as well. Between Caleb Grill, Jacob Cruz, Tamar Bates, they can let it fly, and they have a lot of seniors on this team. I really like Mark Mitchell, who isn't a senior, but might be Missouri's best player, who can get some boards, score pretty much anywhere on the court and play defense as well. So Missouri, they don't have the best defense, but they 100% are going to get out and run and try to outscore you. This team is Marquette, and this is pretty easy. This is going to be a team who is going to play through their best player, and their best player is going to determine how far Marquette goes, and that is Cam Jones. But the good thing about Cam Jones is not only is he one of the best three-point shooters in the country and one of the best scorers in the country, he is very good at finishing under the rim and also one of the better playmakers in the country. He can make some crazy passes. He is going to find the open man, which is why it is going to make it very hard to double team him. So I definitely still could see a run for Marquette. They are another team that started off very strong this year, started to decline slowly, but could be a sleeper team around the 7 seed line. Creighton is an interesting team because they do shoot the ball a lot, but they are going to rely on Stephen Ashworth hitting some threes, and their senior center, who is somehow still playing in Ryan Cockburner. He is one of the better defensive anchors in college basketball, so it is going to be tough to score in the paint against Creighton, but if they can hit their threes, they are going to be dangerous and could make a run. UCLA is a very well-rounded team that does have some talent on this team, but they are very reliant on their defense. If you are scoring above 75 points on UCLA, you are looking pretty good to probably get a W, but they can play some defense. I think they have a very underrated defense this year, and that is really going to determine how far they can go. Memphis, coached by Penny Hardaway. I would love to see Memphis finally get back to the Sweet 16. I think this is the year that they could do it because they are really going to play through their big three of PJ Haggerty, Tyrese Hunter, and Dane Danger. Dane Danger has really broken out as a center for Memphis. Through the second half of the season, he has really scored a ton in the post and been a huge rebounder for this team. And the shooting between Colby Rogers and Tyrese Hunter, that is going to be huge for this team. And PJ Haggerty is a guy who can drive and kick and drive and shoot the mid-range. And yeah, he's awesome to watch. So I definitely think Memphis could be a sleeper team to get to the Sweet 16 this year. Very excited to see what they do. I've been seeing a lot of Illinois fans hype about this team's potential, but I have seen them get blown out a couple of times recently, and you can only use the "I'm sick" excuse so many times. And I know that they did have mono at certain points in the season this year as a team, but they are also have some freshmen that handled the ball quite a bit, and they are going to be determined on some of those freshmen this year. And Kasparas, Jakutionis, and also Will Riley. Those are going to be some big-time freshmen for them that they just can't turn the ball over. Illinois does not have good enough defense to be able to recover from turning the ball over so much. And if they do, they could be a first-round exit, but I honestly feel like Illinois is a Sweet 16 ceiling. So Ole Miss, the one thing about them is that they are coached by Chris Beard. Chris Beard doesn't have the best history with the police, but he does have a good history in the March Madness tournament. He started off at Arkansas Little Rock, where they were able to pull off a 12-5 upset over Purdue, and then he led Texas Tech to the national championship game in 2019. Not just the Final Four, but he won a Final Four game and made it to the national championship. So Chris Beard wins in March. Can he do it now with Ole Miss? They also have a very veteran point guard in Sean Padula, who has been to the tournament before with Virginia Tech. So we will see what they will be able to do this year. Next up, we got Colorado State, who is coming into the tourney as one of the hottest teams in the country. They have one of the only bid steals so far this year, and they also have a star player who has been killing it so far in the Mountain West tournament, where they won the Mountain West tournament, and that is Nick Clifford. He is killing it for them, and he is definitely a player who could lead this Colorado State team to a win or two in March, especially because they are so hot heading into it. UConn is your back-to-back champs, and they are returning one of their starters in Alex Caravan, but other than that, it is a lot of new for this Dan Hurley team this year. They are going to rely on Solo Ball, who has been killing it lately, and also Liam McNeely, who is a freshman who is really good. I don't know if UConn is going to three-peat. I don't think that is possible this year at all. I don't think that they are going to get back to the Final Four even. I think that they are probably going to be looking at a Sweet 16 ceiling, but most likely a first or second round exit. I do think there is some potential there, but I don't think this is a team that UConn is going to win it all with. Next up, we have our preseason #1 team in the country, and that is the Kansas Jayhawks. They have had a very disappointing year for being the preseason #1 team. They are looking around a 6 or a 7 seed, or really even an 8 seed for March Madness this year. And you might be thinking, well, Kansas is a lower seed, they could be a sleeper. It's possible, but they really play through their defense and they play through their big men, which is Hunter Dickinson and KJ Adams Jr. And Zeke Mayo is their one wing who is going to be their X factor. They need him to be able to shoot lights out if they are going to be able to make a run. Can they? Because it is Kansas. I think it's possible if they can get it all together and they get the right matchups. But really, Zeke Mayo has been very inconsistent this year. I don't know if I see it happening. Mississippi State is next, and I really like this Mississippi State team and Josh Hubbard. Josh Hubbard is a very good sophomore that not many people are talking about, probably because he is on Mississippi State, which isn't really your typical basketball school, but he is an excellent player, and Coach Chris Jans is an awesome coach who has pulled off a 12/5 upset whenever he was coaching New Mexico State before. Could we see him get some wins in the tournament with Mississippi State? He did it last year in the first round. Let's see if he can do it again. Georgia is finally making it back to the big dance, and they actually have a pretty good team. Sleeper team in the SEC. They do play in a very tough conference, the toughest conference in the country, but they have really good players like Silas Damari, who is a really underrated point guard in the country, and Asa Newell, who is an awesome freshman center who can step out and hit some jump shots as well. So look out for Georgia. They could definitely be a sleeper. West Virginia is my favorite team, and they are going to rely on two things: forcing turnovers and playing good defense, and Javon Small. Javon Small is going to have to break the double team and hit his guys, hit the open man whenever he is being double teamed, and he has to hit big time shots. I definitely think that they are my favorite team, and I think that they have a Sweet 16 ceiling, and that is if everything is going right for WVU. They are cold entering the tournament as well, but I do think that Javon Small could carry them to a win or two. Utah State is another team that has kind of cooled down lately, and they are a very offensive team out of the Mountain West, and these are typically the type of Mountain West teams that I try to avoid when I am picking my winners in my bracket. Utah State, to me, seems very skeptical, but they did have a very hot start, so we'll see if they can finally get a first round win this year. Vanderbilt has a new team this year and a new coach in Mark Byington, and Mark Byington was the coach of James Madison last year, where they pulled off a 12/5 upset over Wisconsin. Now he is the head coach of Vanderbilt, and he has got them back in the big dance. And one of their better players, AJ Hoggard, who was a very good, solid player for Michigan State last year in the March Madness tournament, who had a big game. So can he do it again for Vandy this year? That is something to keep an eye out on. Indiana, in my opinion, should be in. They are a bubble team, so we will see what the committee says. But they had a lot of preseason hype. They had a big transfer portal offseason, picking up guys like Umar Ballo, who was from Arizona, Miles Wrights from Washington State, both of which played in the tournament last year, and they were returning McKenzie and Baco. They had a solid team, and could that team still carry them to a win or two in March? I could see it happening. I could see them being a sneaky little team as an 11 seed to the Sweet 16 because they have so much talent on their team and nothing to lose. Because Coach Woodson has already decided to part ways with Indiana at the end of the season, they quite literally have nothing to lose. Drake is our next team, and they won the Missouri Valley Conference, so they are 100% going to be in the tournament, and they have some fun players on this team, including Bennett Sturts. Bennett Sturts is actually him. He is a guy who can legit get you 25, 5, and 5 on any given night. And they have some really good shooters on this team around them. But their head coach is Ben McCollum, who has won 4 national championships at the Division II level. And this is his first season as a Division I head coach. And he's already got Drake dancing at what should be at least an 11 seed and a scary team heading into March Madness, because they do have some players who can put the ball in the basket like a Bennett Sturts, but they really play hard defense, and that is how they win games. They win most of their games 65-55, low scoring. Baylor is the next team we're going to be talking about, and Baylor is another team that had a lot of preseason hype. You know, they had some 5-star freshmen coming in, like a VJ Edgecombe, who has really started to break out lately, but they also brought in a senior point guard who played in a Final Four before with Duke Blue Devils in Jeremy Roach, and also a senior center who played in a Final Four with the Miami Hurricanes in Norchad Omier. So this was a team that really seemed like it had it all. It had veterans coming back, veterans coming through the transfer portal, and 5-star freshmen coming in, but their defense is definitely their weakness. Well, they never seem to be able to put it all together this year, but they could have potential with all that talent. Really reminds me of similar potential to Indiana. Can they get it all together and pull off a win or two this March? Oklahoma is going to be back in the big dance, and I think this is the first time Porter Moser has this Oklahoma team back in the NCAA tournament. He was the coach of Loyola Chicago when they made their Final Four run, and since he's been at Oklahoma, they have been on the bubble year after year, not being able to get in. Well, they are in this year, and we will see what they will do. They were undefeated in the non-con this season. When they got into SEC play, reality came to them quick, as they were not playing too good in the SEC. But this team relies on their freshman, Jeremiah Fears. He is going to have some big games if they want to win some games this year during the tournament. Arkansas is next, and their new head coach, John Calipari, has them in the dance, and barely. They were not looking like a tournament team throughout the entire start of the first half of the season. It wasn't until they made the late push lately that they seemed like they were going to be a lock in the tournament. They got some big wins, especially over teams like Kentucky, which really seems like got them into March Madness this year. So we will see what they do. They also have a Final Four point guard on their team, and John L. Davis, who was on FAU and went to the Final Four just a couple of years ago. So, you know, can they make a push with him this year with Arkansas? Next team we're going to be talking about is our bid out of the Big South Conference, and that is High Point. High Point is one of my favorite mid-majors to look out for this year because they have a top 25 offense in all of Division I, and they can get out and run, and they are led by not only Keza Griffa, who is one of my favorite names and one of my favorite players to watch in college basketball, but also Bobby Pettifor, the transfer who used to play at Kansas, now on High Point. Look out for this High Point team. They could be sneaky, but it definitely depends on matchups. They kind of remind me of like a McNeese from last season, who got the wrong matchup and really disappointed a lot of people in March Madness last year. But I do think if High Point gets the right matchup, they could be a nightmare as a 12 or a 13. Wofford is the next team we're going to be talking about, and they have a fun fact, is Kyler Falwich is their center, who is super fun to watch and actually shoots a granny style free throw when he gets to the free throw lines. And these are the type of storylines we need to be looking for heading into the tournament, because these are usually the type of teams that can make a push and become America's team. But other than that, I don't really see them being able to pull off an upset. I will say they play in a tough mid-major league. The SoCon is very good. The SoCon tournament was awesome to watch. Between them, Furman, and Chattanooga, there is a very good conference there. Chattanooga almost pulled off a first-round upset against Illinois last year out of that league, and the year before that, Furman was able to pull off an upset over Virginia. So look out for teams out of the SoCon. Wofford could be that next team. Troy is the next team we're going to be talking about, and Troy is our Sun Belt champs. They beat Arkansas State to be able to get the bid out of the Sun Belt, and they've played teams early on in the season like Oregon and Arkansas, so they might be a little bit tested. They didn't win either of those games, but they know what to expect when who they're about to go against here in the tournament. So look out for them. They are also on a 6-game win streak heading into the tourney. Next is Lipscomb, and Lipscomb got their bid out of their league, and they are a team that does have a super good player who averages 20 points and 8 rebounds a game, and that is Jacob Ognasovic, and he is super solid. But they are really a well-rounded team. They are top 100 in both offense and defense. They don't do anything very spectacularly, but they are a pretty balanced team that definitely runs through their star player, and if they can get the right matchup, who knows, they could pull off some March magic. Next up, we got Omaha, and speaking of teams that just have that March magic feel, Omaha is that team. They have a solid tradition where after every win, they put their coach's face on a trash can, or one of their assistant coaches' faces on a trash can, and just beat it with a baseball bat or something, which is super fun. I could definitely see them pulling off a first-round upset, doing that in the locker room or doing that at midcourt. It would be super fun to see, and that trash can tradition there could definitely be a massive storyline through the first weekend of March Madness. They also have a star player on this team in Marquel Sutton, who averages 19 points and 8 boards. Yes, 8 boards, and he is a guard. Norfolk State. Norfolk State is a team that is projected to be a 15 or a 16 seed. I really hope they can get a 15 because given the right matchup, they could be sneaky. I love this Norfolk State team. They played Tennessee and Baylor in the non-con this year. They only lost to Tennessee by about 12 points. They didn't beat either of those teams, but they did beat High Point, which is going to be, High Point is going to be in the tournament, as we talked about earlier, and they are going to be a higher seed than Norfolk State. I think this Norfolk State team is very sneaky because of Brian Moore Jr., who averages 20 points per game, and they have a very athletic team. They've dunked the ball a lot this year, hit some windmills, some fancy dunks. Could we be looking at a Dunk City 2.0? I don't know if we'll ever see a Florida Gulf Coast team like that again, but I would love to see something like that, and Norfolk State has potential there if they can pull off some upsets. Next team is American, and American definitely deserved to win the Patriot League, and they did because the Patriot League is god-awful. It is the worst league in basketball, and American just happened to be in it, and they just happened to dominate it. So I will give them credit. They did earn it, but I don't expect much from American. They should be a 16 seed. UNC Wilmington, a very sneaky team. They are 27-7 and a good shooting team. They also have a very fun mascot in the Seahawks and some really cool teal jerseys. I think that they have a very, like I said, a good shooting team that, they don't really rely on one player. And given the right matchup, I could definitely see this UNC Wilmington team being very sneaky. Next team is Bryant, and they are going to be back in the big dance this year. I do think that they are going to be a very sneaky team and probably the best 16 seed. It is possible they get a 15, but probably a 16. I think they are probably too good for a 16, but I still don't really see them pulling off a 16 over one upset. Next up is SIUE, which is Southern Illinois University of Edwardsville, and they are making their first ever March Madness tournament appearance this year, so congratulations to them. They are most likely going to be a 16 seed, but they do have a really good player in Rashawn Taylor, so look out for him. He could be dangerous and maybe in the first 4 if they probably going to have to play in the first 4 of that 16 seed game. Could be a difference maker in that one. Next team is McNeese, and they are back in the big dance. Disappointing last year. They had to play Gonzaga in the first round. They were one of the more hyped mid-majors heading into last year's tournament, and they disappointed a lot of people. I think they will be back for vengeance this year, maybe better than ever with some experience, and they still have a very high-powered offense in the mid-majors. They just need to get the right matchup. They also played Alabama earlier this year and only lost by 8 points, and Alabama is going to be a 2 seed in March Madness this year, so look out for McNeese. If they can get a 12 seed again this year and get the right matchup on the 5 line, I think that they can make it happen. Robert Morris is in the tournament out of the Horizon League this year, and to be honest, I'm not very high on Robert Morris at all. I do think the Horizon League is better this year. It's getting better. There are getting to be some more competitive teams in that league, but I am not high on them at all, and I don't expect them to do much in March. Montana is the next team we'll be talking about, and I definitely think Montana could be a sneaky team. They did win the Big Sky Conference over Northern Colorado, and I was pretty high on Northern Colorado, so to see Montana be able to do that, I definitely think that they could be sneaky. They aren't a team that relies on one player. They kind of play as a team, which in some cases could be better. I think of like a St. Peter's who was able to pull off an upset. Yes, they had Doug Eddard who was going crazy, but he wasn't playing like that all season long. He didn't have that high of averages throughout the whole season. So it could be teams like this who are the teams that really pull off the upsets, especially teams who can shoot really well. St. Francis of Pennsylvania is our next team that we'll be talking about, and they might be the worst team that made the tournament this year because they actually have a negative record. They are 16-17 on the year. They were able to beat Central Connecticut in the league championship game, and the final score, neither team got to 50 points. I believe it was something like 47-44 was the final score of that championship game, but they made it in. They are 16-17, and I think they are the worst team in the tournament this year. Mount St. Mary's is next, and they are actually a fairly good rebounding team and a team that could definitely have some potential possibly, but they play in a weak league, and to be honest, I don't have high expectations for Mount St. Mary's this year. Akron, on the other hand, I do have some expectations for. I do think it is possible they could pull off an upset out of the MAC conference. Akron has some really talented players on this team, and they do play through some of their guards, but they kind of spread it around as well, and they've dominated the MAC conference this year, and this MAC conference is not a weak league. I watched a lot of MAC this year, and between Toledo, Kent State, Miami of Ohio, the Ohio Bobcats, I definitely think that there is some talent in the MAC conference this year, and I think that the way that they dominated it this year and was able to still come out of that MAC championship game almost losing to Miami of Ohio, but going on like a 20-2 run to close out that game, including a game-winning layup at the other, I think that was phenomenal, giving them a lot of momentum heading into the tournament, and I am very high on Akron to potentially pull off an upset this year. Next, we have to talk about two separate teams, and that is Yale and Cornell, because at the time I am recording this video, the Ivy League Championship has not been played yet. I do expect Yale to win it, and if they do, they could possibly pull off yet another upset, because last year they did win a game in March Madness where they did beat Auburn as a 4 seed, and Yale was the 13 because of John Polkonitis, who is back on the team this year. He was a March Madness hero last year. Cornell, on the other hand, if they are able to beat Yale, I'm not as high on as a potential team to pull off an upset this year. I do think it is possible. They did beat Cal this year in the non-con, which I thought was pretty interesting because Cal is not a great team, but they are an ACC team, and I thought that was pretty interesting. They also played Robert Morris, and they lost to Robert Morris by 10, and Robert Morris is in the tournament as out of the Horizon League, and like I said earlier, I'm not that high on them, so I don't think Cornell would be able to have the upset potential as Yale, but it is still possible. Anything's possible in March. Next, we have VCU, and VCU has not played their A-10 championship game against George Mason. I do expect VCU to get in either way. Even if they lose in the A-10 championship, I think that they should still get in. And VCU is a very fun team because they are coached by Ryan Odom, who was the coach of UMBC when they pulled off the first ever 16-1 over Virginia in 2018. Now coach of VCU, and do they have a squad? They have a very talented, well-balanced team between Max Shulga, Jack Clark, Joe Bamisel, also Philip Russell, all guys who can score the basketball and also play defense. They are top 50 as a mid-major in both offense and defense. They might even be top 40 now because they have been playing very, very good as of late. And I think if they can beat George Mason, who is a very good defense, they will be one of the hottest teams heading into March Madness. Now let's talk about George Mason. George Mason, on the other hand, won't get in unless they can beat VCU, so we will know on Selection Sunday or this Sunday today if they will be in or not. But George Mason has K.D. Johnson on their team. K.D. Johnson, formerly on Auburn, he has been a huge piece to this team. He is very good on defense, and they are a very good defensive team out of the mid-majors. They have a top 20 defense in the country, and look out for them to pull off an upset if they can get the bid steal out of the A10. Next up, we have UC San Diego, and UC San Diego is a very fun team. They have a lot of really fun shooters on this team. They just won the Big West tourney. Aniwaniwa Tate Jones. What a name, I know, but he is averaging 25-4 for this team, shooting 58% from the field. That is right. Averaging 20 points per game and shooting over 50% from the field, 58% from the field. That is absolutely insane, and they have other great players as well. So a ton of great shooters. Nobody's scared to shoot the ball on this team, and I definitely think that UC San Diego has the potential to be a deep run Cinderella this year. Also talk about UC Irvine, because I'm not sure if they are going to get in, because they did lose in the Big West Tournament Championship, but it is possible they could get in as an at-large. I do doubt it, but I do think it is possible. But they do have a very good center in Ben Luchin, who is, in my opinion, I call him Baby Jokic. He wears Jokic's number. He looks like Jokic. He is an excellent passing big man who can rebound. He can also score in the post, step out and hit a couple of threes every now and again. He is a very good center. And also Miles Che. He is a very fun point guard to watch. I really would like to see the Anteaters in the tournament, but if they do have some upset potential, but I don't expect them to make it on. Next up, we do have Grand Canyon, who just won the WAC, and we know that they got a win in March Madness last year over St. Mary's, and they are returning Tyon Grant Foster, who is one of the better players in the mid-majors, and also their point guard Ray Harrison, who is another super solid player in the mid-majors. Two really good players to look out for. Not only did they beat St. Mary's last year, but they also almost was able to knock off Alabama in the second round, the same Alabama team that went on to make the Final Four. So look out for Grand Canyon once again. They are going to be a pretty high seed, probably a 13 or a 14, but still, you have to look out for them and respect what they can do against some of these top teams. Next up is Liberty, and Liberty is one of my favorite mid-majors to look out for this year because they have wins earlier in the season over McNeese and also Kansas State, and they have some really good shooters on their team, including Caden Matheny, who is an excellent player who's actually from my hometown. I will be rooting for Liberty to pull off a big upset this year, so look out for the Flames. They are back out of the Conference USA. Alabama State just punched their ticket a little bit before I started recording this video, and their interesting fact is their coach's son is on the team, and those are always teams you have to look out for. You think of R.J. Hunter when Georgia State was able to beat Baylor in the first round. He was the coach's son. That's what this made me think of. Now, Alabama State is at best probably going to be a 15 seed, but look out. Tony Madlock is their head coach. TJ Madlock is his son, which I'm assuming TJ is Tony Jr., so look out for them. They could be dangerous because we know March Madness loves the storylines, and those storylines, good things usually happen. We're going to talk about some of the bubble teams that could possibly get in, but we don't know if they're going to be in yet. So I am going to give you guys a couple of extra teams just in case something crazy happens in the bubble. Our first team is going to be Boise State. Now, Boise State is interesting because they have been hot lately. Yes, they did lose in the Mountain West Championship to Colorado State, but they were still very hot heading into that game, and they have some senior players on this team, including Tyson Degenhart, which could be a major player in this March Madness tourney. If they don't make it, they are definitely going to be one of the top seeds in the NIT and a team to look out for with this veteran team. Next up, we have Texas, another team that started to get hot right before the tournament, as they did beat Texas A&M with a big upset in the SEC tournament. They were looking dead in the water, but that win could potentially get them in. I still think that they are probably on the outside looking in, but I think it is possible they get in. And if they do, they're going to rely on star freshman Trey Johnson to carry them to a couple of wins. He has been one of the shiftiest, best scoring players in the entire country, not just as a freshman, but just any player in general. He has been killing it. This Texas team is going to rely on him. He is an absolute bucket. North Carolina is the next bubble team we're going to be talking about, and I'm not sure if North Carolina is going to get in. It is possible that they could be one of the last teams in, and if they do, they have senior point guard and R.J. Davis, who we all know has been to a Final Four and the national championship game before a few years ago when he had his buddies Caleb Love and Armando Bacot on the team. They are no longer on the team, but he has some other good guards with him, including freshman Ian Jackson, who has been killing it this year, Seth Trimble, who's a good shooter, and also Elliot Cadeau, who is a great driver and great playmaker. So this North Carolina team has those 4 really good guards. You have to respect that in the March Madness tournament if they are able to get in. Xavier is a team that I don't expect to get in. They had a pretty disappointing year this year, but they did start to get hot right before the tournament to give themselves at least a little bit of a case. I don't think that they're going to be in, but they're another team that definitely runs through their guards, including Dante Maddox, who could be a pretty good star player, and also power forward Zach Fremantle, who is a senior veteran player who could be dangerous in March Madness if they do get in at large. Next up is San Diego State. San Diego State is a team that I'm very 50-50 on whether they're going to get in or not. So I want to cover all my bases here and talk about them just in case they do get in. But they do have a top 15 defense in the country. That's what you would expect from a San Diego State team. They also have really good guard play with Miles Boyd, and also transfer from FAU, who again has played in a Final Four with FAU, really against San Diego State, matter of fact, and that is Nick Boyd. And he has had some very good games this year. They're going to have defense, rebounding. They're going to need some big shots from Nick Boyd, and they could be another sneaky team to look out for. The last team we're going to be talking about in this video is going to be UAB, just because if they do get a bid steal against Memphis tomorrow in the American Championship, I want to make sure that I give you guys a fact about them, and that is that Andy Kennedy, great head coach, has been to the March Madness tournament before whenever he did have Jelly Walker on the team. Those are some really fun Blazers teams, but they have the potential to get back in the tournament today if they can knock off Memphis. I think it's possible that they can pull off a bid steal. So let me know what you guys think, guys. That is one thing about every single team in this year's March Madness tournament, and some extra teams just in case I get a couple wrong. So make sure you guys subscribe. We got a ton more college basketball content, March Madness content coming your way. Trying to get 10K subs. We're getting very close. So hit that sub button, hit that like button. And you guys, thank you so much for watching.